So just to quickly introduce my panel, I have the amazing Joy Foster, founder of TechPixies. And Joy is an award-winning social media coach, business coach, and life coach. Through Joy's free training, she's helped over 15,000 women get started on social media. And I don't mean just having a profile on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook, but really maximizing the potential of those platforms to help them build their brand, their businesses, and their careers. Then we have Dominie. Dominie Moss has been a leading city headhunter for over 20 years. She was at the helm of Sheffield Haworth before turning to become her own entrepreneur and starting her own business, the Return Hub, in 2016. And Dominie works with SMEs and global organizations, helping them to take advantage of a talent pool of career returners. And last but not least, we have Lucy Standing, who runs Brave Starts. And Brave Starts is a non-profit organization all about helping people midlife work out what they want to do to get back into the world of work, what that looks like for them. And Lucy is very much of the school of thought of no fluff. She is based on evidence-based facts. So if you want warm and fuzzy, but with a no-nonsense approach, Brave Starts and Lucy is where you get started. Now, I have a list. I mean, this is, when I say this is rockstar panel of brands, and you can see these women's businesses are really strong brands in themselves, but the accolades and awards amongst the three of them is really pretty impressive. So without naming names, I'm just going to read a few of them out. So we have Women in Tech Entrepreneur of the Year, a Women's Champion, Top 100 Women of Inspiration, We Are the City Rising Star, Social Media Course of the Year, Trailblazing Company of the Year, City Rising Star Award, and there's any number of government select committees that these women have sat on. I should also mention Joy is also a former member of the US Olympic archery team. So interesting fun fact there. So getting into the nitty-gritty of brand and what it means to us personally, before we dive into that, I think it would be interesting to take a look at the marketplace, the audience, what's out there. And to do that, to get a sense of the harsh reality, I want to start with Dominie, because Dominie, you're on the coalface of this. I mean, I know the focus is city, professional services, and financial services. But what are you hearing from the market? What are the perceptions from business owners, organizations, whether it's HR or senior management teams, of those of us that are considering either going back into work, changing our career, or starting a business? Can I start with you, Dominie?
Yeah, thanks, Annie. Well, I'm sure it won't be a surprise to any of you to know that it is a bit of a tough environment out there, largely due to a huge amount of uncertainty in the world right now. I don't know if about you, but I, for one, have been completely glued to the news for the last, week, 10 days. I think, and as Annie says, I can really only speak for the financial services sector, which is where I am at the coalface. And it's definitely tough times. And actually, if you look at the share price of some of the listed recruitment companies, you'll see the direction of travel is, certainly quite uncertain. But I, for one, have been around long enough to see these cycles, and they are cycles. It's definitely an employer-driven market at the moment, which is a big change from where we were when we came out of the pandemic, when it was very much a candidate-driven market. The market it's not totally dead. There are opportunities out there in some areas. Unfortunately, I think also the D&I industry as a whole is very, very much under pressure, and all the conversations I'm having with my clients at the moment are telling me that they are, we've all seen the newspapers of Accenture sunsetting their diversity targets, and that's definitely is something that's going on much more broadly. And so that has had a bit of an impact on some of the return to work programs that are out there, which is a shame. I think it's going to be more of a pause and a reflecting time for a lot of organisations that are just keeping quiet, to be honest, on what they want to do on this topic. But obviously, the reason why there has been a focus on greater gender diversity in the city is because of, very real sense that the financial crisis was in part due to this sort of groupthink and sort of macho culture. And so this, I think for the regulators, for the government, and for organisations that really understand why this is important, this is a bit of a temporary pause, I very much hope. But yeah, there's no doubt that it is a difficult employment out there, market out there at the moment.
Does that mean that the bar is higher in terms of expectations? Does that mean there's a harsh reality and things are more difficult? Do we need to do and approach things differently to re-enter, given that context?
Yes, and of course there is obviously a bit of a push back into the office as well. So that's not to say that hybrid working is gone. It absolutely isn't. And a lot of the, it's very much the return to the office 5 days a week is very much being led by a lot of the American firms, but also very much within the front office. But I think the more flexible people can be about what they want to do when they go back and how they want their sort of working week to look, then obviously the more opportunities will be available to them. It is a bit of a changing landscape for sure. Yeah.
Joy, can I move on to you? So you're dealing with people growing businesses, you're dealing with businesses and organisations at every level. What are you seeing from their perspective, and how does that inform how you equip your client base?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I don't listen to the news or watch the news or spend any time on the news, especially right now, and I understand why people are doing it, but for me, it's a spiral downwards, and I don't feel that it's important for what the work I do. I know there's chaos in the market, but there's always going to be chaos in the market. If I showed you headlines from 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, we all know what happened 5 years ago, there's always a crisis going on. And so I think one of the most important things is to rise above the crisis and, put a pause on the panic. And what do I mean by that? Take 3 days away from it and actually do breathe the fresh air, because you do need fresh air to breathe or to live. And I think getting away from that is actually really important, and being able to ground yourself in what's true. So there's facts and there's truth, right? So the facts are, Elon Musk is hanging out in the White House. The truth is, I can rise above that, right? And we're seeing people take action with that. I work primarily with women who want to return to work, change careers, or start a business. I got a beautiful text yesterday from a woman, I won't read it, but I'll just paraphrase it, who a year ago was freaking out about taking a research job part-time. She felt like everyone else is gonna see right through me, that I'm a fraud, that I haven't done this for years. She'd, and so she really was very nervous about it. And we did something called a brain prime, where I helped her in an hour create a new script that she could tell herself every morning, every night. So when she woke up in the morning, first thing she focused on, and then when she went to bed, that was the last thing she focused on. And she said yes to this opportunity, but every day in this opportunity for a while she was freaking out, because she thought, they'll figure me out. They'll figure out that I don't really know what I'm doing. And actually she did know what she was doing. And the way that the brain priming works is, after about 40 days, she started to believe what she was telling herself, that I actually know my stuff, and that I'm good at what I do, and that I'm valued here. And then at 67 days, which is when the new neural network kicks in, so you replace the old way of thinking with the new way of thinking, it takes 67 days. It takes 52 days for a neuron to be created in a petri dish. Right? So changing the way that we think takes a period of time, which is why I don't spend any time on the news, because it's not going to help. It's going to reinforce all the fear. So the brain prime that we created for her starts kicking in 67 days. And anyway, to paraphrase, she sent me a message yesterday. She said, I got offered a full-time permanent position with this company. I've been on the freelancer train for 20 years. I can't believe this has happened. Thank you so much. So, for me, it's about changing your mindset. Whether it's running a business or going back to work, you've got to focus on the mind and changing the way that you think to invite the opportunities that you really want to create.
That's great. And I think I love the, press pause on the panic. You have to acknowledge the reality, but you don't have to dive into it.
Yeah,
and so, do what you can control rather than what you can't control.
Yeah, and in 3 days, if you still want to have a pity party, have the pity party, but just don't camp there. Don't stay there. Put the pause for another 3 days and just process that again.
Fantastic, thanks. And thanks for bringing in the neuroscience, because I know that's going to come through as a thread of our conversation. Lucy, what about you? In the conversations that you're having, your perspective on businesses and organisations, keen for your input, but also to see, do you see a difference in perspective from, say, business leaders and then HR, who are also an important audience as people are considering either changing track or re-entering? What's your take?
So Dominie's got sort of slightly more of a finance focus, I suppose, and then I don't really work directly with businesses, but we do research and spend time looking at a kind of a wide range. What I can tell you is that, in 2022, CIPD was looking at a survey, how many organisations are thinking about, the fact we're all living longer and entry points at different stages in careers. 83% of organisations aren't thinking about that in any way, shape or form. Only 13% of organisations plan on looking at that, and this is over 2,000 organisations. Digging into it, we've done our own research, 226 organisations. Why aren't you thinking about this? Look at all these midlife people, could be amazing opportunity. Frankly, no business case as far as most of them are concerned. And the other issue they care about more than anything else is solving the race, ethnicity gap, and then the gender gap. So on the whole, I don't see this sort of thing changing anytime soon, but I am quite optimistic. So I would agree. I think the market's bad. I don't think organisations are that motivated to change it. No plans in government to incentivise organisations to do that either. But the number of freelancers is increasing. The number of platforms that you can sell services through. If you look at the platform market, that was worth about 5 billion in 2018. By 2030, it's going to be worth over 18 billion. So the opportunities people have, if you're proactive and if you've got skills and if you've got experience and you've got the balls, then quite frankly, you'll be able to go out and market yourself. So probably quite relevant for the rest of the panel.
Fantastic. So again, it's about acknowledging what's going on, but not letting that be the defining factor of what you do about it. So you should feel empowered and not sort of, debilitated by the news headlines. So we're going to move now into the nitty-gritty about what it looks like to build your brand. And I had the privilege of having 3 quick conversations with these women a few weeks ago about what's your take on brand? Because I'm a career coach and it's kind of central to a lot of what the frameworks that I have on building your personal brand. And I'm going to go straight to Lucy, who is the school of no-nonsense approach, and say, okay, if I'm sitting in the audience, Lucy, and I'm thinking, well, what do I need? What are the key attributes? Where do I start in building my brand? Is it a load of kind of Instagram soundbite BS? Do we navel gaze? Yeah. What's your take?
I would say, bearing in mind that I think when Sarah was standing up, asking who the audience is made up of here, a lot of people, you're starting your own businesses, you're wanting to get more clients and build and grow. Majority of the audience I'm spending time with, quite frankly, want jobs. And if I was to spend a lot of time saying to them, well, what's your personal brand? To a large extent, it really doesn't matter, because you can apply for a certain job and 95% of the time the algorithm's going to kick you out because you haven't ticked the right box. Because we are dealing in a situation at the moment where recruitment's completely broken. There is a situation where I would say, acknowledging that, let's acknowledge that recruitment's broken. Then you have to think about, well, how would you get a job if there was no such thing as a CV and no such thing as a jobs board? You'd have to be proactive, you'd have to market yourself, you'd really have to understand your customer. And you can have the nicest brand in the world, but if you haven't actually understood what your customer wants, and if you haven't understood what they will actually pay for, I'd say I'd worry about that a hell of a lot more. I think the branding is the icing on the cake. If I've got 3 different companies that I can go to, then the about page is going to matter to me. But if the price point isn't right, if the business model isn't right, if you're not doing what I want you to do, if I want a plumber to come in, I want them to be able to serve my need, I want them to have the skill. I'm not going to worry so much about how good their website looks. I'm probably not even going to care about their website. I'm probably going to ask my friend for a referral. So quite frankly, it's the competence, it's the skill, it's being able to do all those things. If you can do all of that, then I would say branding matters. But I think to focus on branding at the sacrifice or without getting all of the other bits right, I think it's the wrong focus.
Perfect, thanks. I would argue that brand there are various elements of brand, and critical to that is competency and expertise, because without that, it's kind of nothing. But I am going to move over to Joy now, because again, in my conversation with Joy, and I think I quoted in our chat, Sarah, Joy, talk to us about what it means to you to take off your invisibility cloak and how that is a foundational principle for building your brand, because I think it gives the opposite view of what that looks like in terms of building brand?
Well, I think we could take a poll. So how many people in this room have their invisibility cloak firmly on when it comes to being on social media? Everyone's got that off? No, yeah, put your hand up if your invisibility cloak's on. You haven't taken it off, right? So either people aren't putting their hand up because they don't want to acknowledge it, but most women have their invisibility cloak firmly on. And it is a superpower because it protects you, it keeps you safe. And what we find is, we used to have this scale of women when it came to social media, and the first one was the social media spectator. Like, you're on it, but you're watching what everyone else is doing. And then we have a social media dabbler, where occasionally you post, occasionally you comment, but you're more afraid that whatever you put out there you can't delete, or you're going to break the internet, that sort of thing. So you're very cautious about what you post and do. A couple chuckles in the room, so I know there's people who get that. And then we have the social media star and the superstar. And the social media star they know how to set up a profile, they know how to post properly, they're sort of engaging. And then the superstar is, how do I leverage this to make money? Right? How do I leverage this to build up my network? How do I leverage this to get a job? How do I leverage this to launch a business? And there's really 3 major benefits to personal branding and putting yourself out there, as scary as it is, and taking off that invisibility cloak. The first one is it gives you confidence, right? And I love to tell the story of Jamie Kern-Lima. She had rosacea. She started a makeup brand, and they wanted to put skinny models that didn't have rosacea on QVC. And she was like, well, no, people have to see me because they have to relate to me. I'm big boned, I'm red faced, and they need to see that if I can solve this problem, that they can solve this problem. And so she got the courage to go on to QVC. Her brand eventually sold for $1.2 billion to L'Oreal. Who would like $1.2 billion? Let's see if we can get a hand on that. Yeah, okay, a few more hands on that one, right? So, personal branding, it gives you confidence. That's the first thing. The second thing, it helps you get a job. It helps you get more clients. Stephen Bartlett, love him or hate him, he's generating a lot of sales for the businesses he invests in because of the fact that he's got a platform. Now, it's not working so well for Elon Musk this week, but it's the same idea that your brand can grow your business, your brand can get you a job. And the third benefit of putting yourself out there is the opportunities it creates. By putting yourself out there, by taking off that invisibility cloak, you get opportunities, like me being able to be here, because Sarah and I have known each other for a long time, and she trusts me. She knows I'm going to come up, and she knows what I'm going to say, and I love being here. It's one of my favorite rooms every year to be in. So you get opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise got. Last week, I had breakfast at the House of Lords with Dame Helena Morrissey. I was at a black tie dinner with Eleanor Mills, who just wrote Much More to Come, on the same day. Right? And then on Friday, I spoke in front of 200 women. I was the keynote speaker at an event. I wouldn't have got any of those opportunities. I even got to pitch to Sir Richard Branson and Simon Squibb on Friday morning. I would have had none of those opportunities if my invisibility cloak was not off. And occasionally you can put it back on. But, the idea is you've got to have the courage. And, one of my favorite quotes is, confidence comes from doing things you've never done before and realizing you didn't die.
Yeah.
And then courage, if you don't have the confidence, grab the courage. That's your backup plan.
Fantastic, thank you. And I do think these are critical elements that all together comprise a very compelling story about brand. And the confidence piece, it's a very empowering process to go through where you self-reflect and understand yourself better, what's in your gift, the tangible and the intangible. You package that up, you know who you are, and then you consistently apply it to create the audience, whether it's in an interview or whether it's on social media or whether it's targeting for the right job. But Dominie, last but not least, whilst you're spending a lot of time with the clients in the city, you're also prepping lots of candidates to get ready for interviews, and maybe they haven't had an interview for a long time. Again, from a brand perspective, what do you see as the really essential ingredients to get them ready so that they're turning up in the right way? What would your advice be?
Well, there's a lot of advice, and actually I'll just mention here's the Career Academy, which is a totally free suite of digital tools that we built at the Return Hub. You can access them on the Return Hub website, and in there's a whole load of information on things like CV writing, which of course is often the first a bit of sort of marketing collateral that you have about yourself, and when you're applying for a role, that's how people make those first judgments. But if you do get invited to an interview, there's an awful lot of preparation that you can do to make you feel like you do have some agency in this whole process, which can and sometimes seem overwhelming. I'm going to tell a story about, some of you may know that female founders get only 2% of venture capital funding. And there was a really interesting piece of research that was done, this is all in the Harvard Business Review, about why that is. And they looked, there was a VC event, I think it was in the US somewhere, and they looked at all the questions that the male and female VCs were asking the male and female founders to see if there was something going on there. And what they found out was that the male founders were asked more opportunity questions in the pitch process, and the female founders were asked more problem questions. So, for example, the male founders were asked, how quickly can you scale your business, and what new products can you bring to market, and what new countries can you open up in, or whatever it might be. And the female founders were asked more questions like, what's the competition in your market, and what the governance issues around X, Y, or Z, this type of thing. And it was only to marginal extent, but obviously if you're looking at where investment money is going to flow, it's going to go in the direction where you think there's an opportunity rather than where you think there might be a problem. And it is my belief that this is potentially replicated in an interview situation where organizations are essentially looking to invest in an asset, in a person. And so when you are going for a job interview, I think it's really important to be aware of this. And this isn't, I should say, this is all VCs. This isn't male VCs asking male founders and female. This is this is people asking these questions. So I think it's really important to be aware of some of these things so that you can go in and present yourself as an opportunity. I think the other thing is, often as women, we go in there thinking, well, if I sort of pitch myself here, that's my safety zone, and when I get the job, I'm going to absolutely nail it. And of course, forgetting that there are other people in the interview process on the shortlist who will be going in up here, even if they're only going to deliver down here. So just be really aware of that. I think practice as well. Practice answering those really open questions like, tell me about yourself, or why do you want to come and work for X, Y, Z? Because these are the easy things to get right, but can so often go wrong. I think. What else do I think? There's loads more advice on the Career Academy on the Return Hub website. So do check that out.
And when we were talking even about the simplest things of if you're interviewing on Zoom, just be aware of your background.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Executive presence seems such an old-fashioned thing to talk about these days.
Yeah.
But actually feeling confident and having the right lighting and having your screen set at the right angle can really make a difference to having a better conversation, because it's all about having a better conversation.
Yeah.
And I think to your point about getting in there and really seeing that conversation through the lens of the employer.
Yeah.
What's the value add I'm bringing to the organisation, not just the role I'm applying for, and what's the value add to the business, and then the human impact to the team around it. So just having a bit more of a holistic view of an equal conversation rather than one-dimensional.
And I think sometimes it's really important to remember that having a career conversation with me or any other headhunter is absolutely fine, and kind of having a discussion about the 2 or 3 or 4 different things that you could do, or when you go in for an interview, it's not a career counselling conversation. It's it's an opportunity to say why you want to do that exactly that role, and what your skills are, and why you're relevant, and what your experience is. And the other thing to say is what we know from data is that women often don't apply for a role unless they've feel like they can do 100% of it. Whereas men can sometimes apply when they, maybe do 70 or 80%. This is, we hear this statistic all the time. I'm sure we're well aware of that. Where there are elements of a role that you haven't done before, it's not about necessarily saying highlighting the things that you haven't done. I mean, I always say to my candidates, an interview is never the place to say what you can't do. It's only the place to say what you can do. And as I say, where there are elements of a role that perhaps you haven't done or you're not sure about, it's really worth thinking, okay, what are the things that I have done that I can draw on that are relevant for that thing that I haven't done? Or where are the times when I can demonstrate that thing in my previous role that I hadn't done before and I picked it up really quickly, I'm a fast learner? Or it's really just thinking about that past experience and what's relevant for that thing. And if you really can't draw on anything, then it's about thinking, what would my process be? Like, that thing I haven't done before, this is how I would tackle it. These are the steps I would take. This is how I'd find out about it. And this would be my approach.
Fantastic. So take a really active approach rather than a passive one. And also point of reference not being just the past, but really be geared forward to the future.
Yes.
So I'm going to come back. So we've had some insights into what brand means to everybody, some good takeaways on substantive things to consider of what's in your gift, where you'd like to take it. If I've got the brand now, I've got the building blocks of, what my skills are, how I'm feeling, what I stand for, all of those things. How do I leverage it? What do I do? Joy, if I can ask you first.
Well, first of all, I love that advice. Don't ever talk about what you're bad at in an interview. So I hope everyone takes that to heart. What do you do next? You've got the foundation.
Yeah.
You say, yes, I'm going to put myself out there. Then what do you do next? I mean, obviously, I teach social media. I encourage women to use social media on a regular basis. I'm a big fan of posting once a week, finding your voice. I love going out and building a business. I mean, I've learned more building 3 businesses than I ever learned in a job. And so, if some of you are thinking, maybe should I start a business? Go start a business. And unfortunately, I didn't have the great advice you had from the ladies in front. I had no savings. I had no cushion. I just had to go do it. And I applied for grants, and I won grants. And then, when I spent all the grant money, I raised investment. And when all the investment money was gone and I couldn't get more investment, I took out loans. I've done everything the financial ladies said don't do. But I have gone on a wild adventure of self-development and personal development. And I've been able to take everything I've learned and apply it and teach it to the people that I work with. I mean, my students, et cetera, and clients and a community. So I think number one is having the courage to say, I'm going to take off my invisibility cloak. I'm going to become visible. And then number 2 is really imagine yourself being the person doing the thing that you want to do. And we'll do this later in a workshop that I'm going to do. But really, imagine yourself 3 years from now. It's 2028. I'm so happy and grateful now that all these things have happened for me. And write down the things that you want to have happen in your life as if they are happening. And try it on like a Halloween costume, right? I'm so happy and grateful now that, my vision currently is, we've sold our London house and, it's easy to pay for the children's education. And, I've got money in the bank. And, I've got certain visions in my head that I know I would love these things to happen. I have a vision of, and I've got an investor in the room, I've got a vision of buying out my investors and celebrating, or, whatever we do with the sale of the company eventually one day, but celebrating at the Ivy in the Botanic Room. It's such a beautiful room. I've got that visual in my head that I've given them 2-3 times the amount of money that they gave me back. I've taken care of them. I've celebrated them. I've thanked them. I've got that vision in my head. So the first thing is being willing to take off the invisibility cloak, making the decision that you're going to do that. The second thing is, what does my life look like 3 years from now when it's all worked out? And then from that energy, from that place of it's all worked out, then take your action step. Then take your move. Because you're going to make a better decision, you're going to make a better move from a higher level of energy than you will from trying to decide what you're going to do that day to get yourself out there after you've just listened to the news is going to drag you down. So you've got to bring yourself into this place where it all worked out. Everybody's been paid back. I sold my house. It's easy to pay the children's school fees. It's all worked out. And if you're going through a divorce, you met the new person and he's great and he's nothing like the one you're with. Whatever it is, but you've got that vision of your life and take action from that point. So make the decision, see the vision, then take action.
I'm just seeing, so that the next conference is going to be at the Ivy at the Botanical Gardens with Joy, celebrating that kind of sellout, or whoever the investors are in the audience. I love that though, but I love the vision thing and then taking action. One small step, any small step. Your brain will thank you for the momentum.
Decision, vision, action.
Decision, vision, action. You heard it here first. Dominie, leveraging it, what does it look like in practical steps?
Well, I'm not sure I can add much more to what Joy's just said. But I would reiterate the change equation again, which is similar. It's the dissatisfaction with this present situation plus vision for change is when those things are greater than the status quo. That's when change really happens. But I perhaps might just say one thing. When I set up my own business that I sort of was really very focused on is that it's really important to think, what problem are you solving and who you're solving it for? Because if I was not doing what I was doing now, I'd be doing something completely different, which is probably imagining myself in an artist studio, painting away with oil paints and having a lovely life as an artist. But in reality, the only people that would buy my work would probably be my mother, and even that would be a bit of a stretch. So whilst that might be solving a problem for me, I'm not sure it'd be solving a problem for anyone else. So it's really important to think, what is the market for your product, for your business? What problem are you solving for a person or a business, and are they going to pay you for it?
Brilliant, super practical. Thank you. Lucy.
Yeah, I love that, because quite frankly, you can all do things, we'll have this idea, we'll do things we love, but will anyone pay us for it? Probably not. We actually pay people to do the stuff that we don't want to do.
Yeah.
Is the reality of it. I think in terms of leveraging brand, and careful to say I'm not a branding expert in any way, shape or form, but I would just go back to the points that we've already kind of said, which is you're much better off focusing on making sure you absolutely understand what your customer wants, being proactive. As long as you're sort of looking at those sorts of things, thinking about your marketing strategy. You might have developed a podcast, you might have developed a website, but how are people going to look at it? If you're focusing on those things, then as I say, get people to the website. They don't have the luxury of seeing you and reading about you if they're not seeing your website in the first place. So marketing strategy, have you got the right suppliers, partners, those sorts of things in place? Are you targeting the right audiences? Learn from experience. I'd actually say take action first and then reflect. A lot of experience comes in the action.
Well, I think that's been a great conversation and three very different perspectives, but all grounded in practical, but also transformational. So you can have the practical output, but if the heart and the mind and the soul's not there, you don't have the energy to get you there. So thank you very much. I know there's some workshops later on, and you're all here for questions for the audience for the rest of the morning and this afternoon. But with that, thanks to my guests.
Thank you.